The morning sun cast a golden glow over my quiet countryside farm. My horses, a mix of powerful stallions and gentle mares, roamed freely in the paddock, their hooves kicking up soft clouds of dust. Owning this land had been a dream come true, a peaceful, self-sufficient life away from city chaos. That was until Karen moved into the newly built housing development just down the road. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the self-appointed queen of her homeowners association, a woman with an overinflated sense of authority and an unshakable belief that she could control anything within her eyesight. She had already tried to tell me my wooden fence was an eyesore and that my horses made too much noise. I had laughed it off, thinking she would get bored and move on, but I was wrong. It all started when I noticed an unusual number of cars parked outside my property one Saturday afternoon. Confused, I walked toward my stables, only to find a small crowd of parents and children gathered around the fence. A group of kids had somehow made it inside the paddock, petting my horses like they were at some kind of petting zoo. My blood ran cold when I spotted Karen, standing smugly at the entrance, chatting with a group of parents as if she had organized the whole event. I marched over, my boots crunching against the gravel. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded. Karen turned, all fake sweetness and condescension. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she cooed. "I just mentioned to some of my HOA members that you had such lovely horses and they were dying to see them. You should be grateful, really. Your farm is getting so much attention." Grateful, I nearly choked on my own rage. "This is private property," I snapped. "You had no right to invite strangers onto my land." Karen scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "Oh, please, it's just some families enjoying nature. You should be honored that your farm is bringing the community together. And besides," she added with a smug grin, "there are no signs saying no trespassing. So technically it's open to the public." My hands clenched into fists. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Karen had decided, without asking me, that my private horse stable was now a public petting zoo. And by the smug look on her face, she had no intention of stopping. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. My horses, especially my stallions, were not trained for crowds. If one of these kids got kicked or spooked a horse, the consequences could be disastrous. But Karen didn't care. She had turned my livelihood into her personal amusement park. That was when I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was war. Karen's audacity left me fuming. She had turned my private horse stable into a petting zoo without so much as asking, and now she stood there, arms crossed, acting like she had done me a favor. I could hear the parents laughing, the kids squealing in delight as they ran their hands over my horses, horses that weren't trained for this kind of interaction. My stallions, in particular, were strong, unpredictable, and not meant for casual petting by strangers. I stepped forward, my voice firm. "Everyone needs to leave. Now, this is private property and you're trespassing." One of the parents, a man wearing a pastel polo shirt, frowned at me. "Oh, come on," he said, rolling his eyes. "The kids are just having fun. It's not like they're hurting anything." I gestured toward one of my stallions, Thunder, whose ears were pinned back in clear irritation. "That horse weighs over 1,000 pounds. If he gets startled, he could seriously hurt someone. This isn't a petting zoo. It's my livelihood." Karen let out an exaggerated sigh. "You're being so dramatic," she said, shaking her head. "You have all this land, all these beautiful animals, and you want to keep them locked away from the community? How selfish." Selfish, my jaw tightened. "You're trespassing," I repeated. "If you don't leave in the next 5 minutes, I'm calling the sheriff." Karen's smile faltered for a second before she forced out a laugh. "Oh, please, you wouldn't actually do that." I pulled out my phone. "Try me." That did it. The parents, suddenly aware that they were, in fact, breaking the law, started gathering their kids. Karen, however, stood her ground, glaring at me. "You know," she said, flipping her perfectly styled hair, "if you put up a proper sign, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I'm just saying it's your fault for not making it clear." My grip on my phone tightened. I had signs, plenty of them. But I had a feeling Karen had conveniently ignored them because they didn't fit into whatever delusional fantasy she had about controlling the neighborhood. As the last of the trespassers left, I turned to Karen. If I ever see you or anyone else on my property again without my permission, I will press charges." Karen smirked. "We'll see about that." And with that, she turned and strutted away, as if she hadn't just blatantly broken the law. I exhaled sharply, watching her disappear down the road. She thought she had won. She thought she could keep doing whatever she wanted without consequences. She was wrong, because now I wasn't just going to stop her. I was going to make her regret ever stepping foot on my land. I barely got a moment's peace before Karen escalated her antics. Over the next few days, I noticed more strangers loitering near my property, peering over the fence as if expecting a free show. Some even had the nerve to pull out their phones and take pictures of my horses. It didn't take long to figure out why. Karen had spread the word that my petting zoo was open for visits. The final straw came when I caught a group of kids trying to climb my fence to get inside the paddock. I sprinted over before they could succeed, my heart pounding. "Get down!" I shouted, startling them. "You can't be in here." One of the kids, probably no older than 10, pouted. "But the lady said it's okay." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "What lady?" "The blonde one with the sunglasses," a little girl piped up. "She said your horses are friendly and we could pet them any time we want." "Karen, of course." I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. These were children, innocent kids who didn't know any better, but Karen, she knew exactly what she was doing. She was deliberately endangering them just to push her ridiculous agenda. I helped the kids down from the fence, then turned toward their parents who were standing on the sidewalk watching with mild interest. "Who told you this was okay?" I asked, barely keeping my anger in check. A woman in yoga pants and oversized sunglasses shrugged. "The HOA mentioned it in their latest newsletter. They said your stable was a great place for kids to interact with animals." I saw read, the HOA newsletter. Karen had put my private property in an official community bulletin without asking me. I turned on my heel and stormed toward my house. Enough was enough. If Karen wanted to play dirty, so could I. By the time I reached my porch, I already had a plan forming. Karen thought my horses were so friendly. She thought my stable was a petting zoo. Fine, I'd let her experience it firsthand. And I knew exactly which of my horses would be eager to help. I spent the rest of the day fine-tuning my plan. Karen wanted my stable to be a public attraction. Well, I'd make sure she got a VIP experience, one she'd never forget. First, I called up my friend Jake, a local sheriff's deputy. "Hey, man," I said, keeping my tone casual. "What's the legal situation if someone keeps trespassing after being warned?" Jake chuckled. "If you've warned them and they keep coming back, that's criminal trespassing. You can absolutely press charges. Why, got a problem?" "Oh, just a little one named Karen." Jake groaned. "Say no more, what's she done this time?" I filled him in, and by the time I was done, he was just as irritated as I was. "Look," he said, "I can't arrest her unless she actually steps onto your property again, but if you get proof, I'll back you up. You need anything else?" "Just one thing," I said, smirking. "Can you swing by tomorrow and act like you're here for an official complaint? I want Karen to know I'm serious." "You got it." With that taken care of, I turned to the real stars of my plan, my stallions. Now, don't get me wrong, I love all my horses, but my two stallions, Brutus and Diablo, weren't exactly the cuddly type. They were big, powerful, and full of attitude. Brutus was a massive black Frisian with a habit of nipping at anything that annoyed him. Diablo, a muscular Andalusian, had a particular dislike for people who invaded his space. Karen had no idea what she was about to walk into. The next morning, I put phase 1 of my plan into action. I left my stable doors wide open, making it look inviting. Then, I grabbed some supplies and set up a fresh new sign, one that would lure Karen right where I wanted her. Sure enough, it didn't take long. By mid-afternoon, I heard Karen's smug voice floating over my fence. "Well, would you look at that? Finally embracing your role in the community, I see." I didn't turn around. Instead, I casually wiped down one of my saddles and let her take the bait. "Exclusive VIP horse experience, come meet the Stallions," she read aloud. See, I knew you'd come around. The HOA will be so thrilled. I fought back a grin. Oh, Karen, you had no idea what you were walking into. Karen strutted onto my property like she owned the place, heels clicking against the gravel as she approached the stable. Well, well, she said with a smug grin. I knew you'd see reason eventually. A petting zoo is such a great idea for the community. I turned, wiping my hands on my jeans. Oh, absolutely, I said, keeping my tone friendly. I figured if people are so eager to meet my horses, I should give them a proper up-close experience. Karen beamed. Finally, you're showing some community spirit. I gestured toward the stable. Why don't you go first? As the one who spread the word, you should be the guest of honor. She didn't hesitate, practically barging past me into the barn. I followed closely, suppressing a grin as I led her to the back stall, where my two most sociable boys were waiting, Brutus and Diablo. The second Karen stepped inside. Brutus huffed loudly, ears twitching as he sized her up. Diablo pawed at the ground, impatient. I had made sure they were just restless enough to put on a good show. Karen, completely oblivious, stepped forward, her arms outstretched like she was about to embrace a pair of golden retrievers. Oh, they're beautiful, she cooed. Brutus snorted sharply, taking a bold step toward her. His massive frame towered over her, his deep black coat gleaming under the stable lights. Diablo flicked his tail, letting out a sharp grunt. That was when Karen's confidence wavered. She muttered, taking a small step back. They seem big. Oh, don't worry, I said, barely holding back a laugh. They love new visitors. As if on cue, Brutus suddenly snapped his teeth together, not quite close enough to bite, but definitely close enough to make Karen jump. She let out a shriek, stumbling backward. Did he just try to bite me? I tilted my head innocently. Oh, Brutus, no, he just likes to test boundaries. Karen's eyes darted toward Diablo, who snorted aggressively, shifting his weight like he was ready to charge. The sound echoed through the stable. Karen squeaked, I think I should go. Nonsense, I said cheerfully, blocking the doorway just enough to make her panic. You wanted a real horse experience, right? You wouldn't want to disappoint the community. Brutus stomped his hoof. Diablo let out a deep huff. Karen screamed. And in that moment I knew I had won. Karen's face turned pale as Brutus took another step toward her, his massive frame blocking her way. Diablo flicked his tail and let out a loud, sharp snort, making Karen flinch so hard she nearly tripped over her own feet. I think I've seen enough, she stammered, her usual smugness completely gone. She took a hesitant step back, only for Brutus to lower his head slightly, his huge dark eyes locked onto her like a predator sizing up prey. Oh, come on, I said, barely suppressing my laughter. You wanted a hands-on experience. Karen tried to move toward the exit, but I casually stepped to the side, just enough to make her hesitate. She glanced back at Brutus, who was now sniffing at her hair, his warm breath making her shudder. Then Diablo, impatient with all the excitement, decided to add to the fun. He jerked his head forward, tossing his mane and letting out a loud, throaty whinny. The sudden noise sent Karen into full-blown panic mode. Get me out of here, she shrieked, bolting toward the exit. Unfortunately for her, Brutus wasn't done playing. As she turned, he gave a little nip at her sleeve, not hard enough to hurt, but just enough to send her running at full speed. She slammed into the stable door with a thud, struggling to yank it open in her blind panic. When it finally gave way, she stumbled out, arms flailing, and promptly fell straight into a pile of fresh horse manure. The barn echoed with the sound of my unrestrained laughter. Karen, now covered in horse poop, let out an ear-piercing scream. She scrambled to her feet, furious, humiliated, and absolutely fuming. You did that on purpose, she shrieked, wiping manure off her expensive designer sweater. I crossed my arms, smirking. Me? Oh no, Karen, you're the one who insisted on a community petting zoo. I just gave you the experience you wanted. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish, completely speechless. Finally, with an enraged huff, she spun on her heel and stormed off, dripping manure with every step. The second she was out of earshot, I turned back to Brutus and Diablo, who were both watching me with innocent expressions. "Good boys," I said, giving them each a well-earned pat. Karen had wanted a petting zoo. Well, she sure got one. Karen's dramatic exit would have been satisfying enough, but fate had a little extra justice in store for her. As she stormed away, covered in manure, she didn't realize that my friend Jake, the sheriff's deputy, had just pulled up in his patrol car. The second she saw him, she froze, her face twisted in horror. Jake, to his credit, managed to keep a straight face for all of 5 seconds before letting out a low whistle. "Well, Karen," he said, leaning against his car, "you look like you've had a hell of a day." Karen turned beet red, yanking at her ruined sweater. This lunatic set me up," she sputtered, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Her horses attacked me." Jake raised an eyebrow, looking from me to the horses, who were now calmly munching hay, looking like the picture of innocence. "Attacked you?" he repeated, amused. "Funny, because I was just about to have a little chat with you about all the trespassing complaints we've been getting." Karen's face went from red to pale in an instant. "Trespassing? That's ridiculous, I was just—" Jake held up a hand, pulling out a small notepad. "Let me get this straight. You invited people onto private property without permission, encouraged kids to climb fences around large, unpredictable animals. And now you're mad because the horses you called friendly turned out to be, what, a little too much for you." Karen opened and closed her mouth, completely trapped. "I could arrest you right now for trespassing," Jake continued, flipping a page in his notebook. "Or maybe reckless endangerment, since you endangered children by lying about the safety of these animals." Karen's eyes widened. "Wait, no, I didn't." Jake tapped his chin thoughtfully. "Or maybe we just go the easy route. Since you and the HOA love newsletters, how about we make an official police statement about why people shouldn't believe everything they read in them?" Karen squeaked. She looked around desperately, probably hopping for some HOA backup, but no one was there to save her. Finally, she clenched her jaw and crossed her arms. "Fine, whatever. I'll leave him alone." Jake smirked, glad to hear it, and Karen. She turned, looking miserable. "You might want to hose yourself off before you go home," he said, grinning. "Wouldn't want to track all that horse manure into your fancy HOA meeting." Karen let out a strangled noise, spun on her heel, and stormed off, trailing manure with every step. I leaned against the stable door, watching her disappear down the road. Victory had never smelled sweeter. With Karen finally gone, I let out a deep breath and turned back to my horses. Brutus and Diablo were still standing near the stall, their ears perked up as if waiting for my reaction. I grinned and patted Brutus's thick neck. "You, my friend, deserve an extra treat today." Diablo snorted, as if demanding his share too. I spent the rest of the afternoon enjoying the peaceful quiet of my farm, something I hadn't truly felt since Karen had decided my land was some kind of public park. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee on the porch, I took great joy in reading the HOA's latest community announcement. It read, "Due to a recent, unfortunate misunderstanding, we would like to remind all residents that my nameless horse stable is private property and not a public petting zoo. Under no circumstances should anyone enter the property without explicit permission. Thank you for your cooperation." Translation: Karen got humiliated so badly that even the HOA wanted nothing to do with her nonsense. I chuckled, shaking my head, but the real cherry on top came later that afternoon. As I was tending to the horses, one of my friendlier neighbors, Mrs. Thompson, stopped by. She was an older lady, always kind and respectful of my farm. "Well, I have to say," she said, leaning on the fence, "that was the funniest thing this town has seen in years. Everyone's talking about how Karen ran home covered in horse manure." I grinned. Guess she learned her lesson, huh? Mrs. Thompson laughed. "Oh, honey, she's been avoiding eye contact with everyone since yesterday, and rumor has it she's skipping the next few HOA meetings." She winked. "You might just get some peace and quiet after all." And you know what? She was right. After her humiliating VIP horse experience, Karen never dared step foot on my property again. No more uninvited guests, no more entitled demands, and best of all, No more fake community events featuring my animals. As I leaned on the fence, watching my stallions graze peacefully, I smiled to myself. Karen had wanted a petting zoo. Instead, she got a lesson in respecting private property, one she'd never forget.